Yauyama Kwaba.
Yeah.
Lovely to have you again.
It's really great to be here.
I think so the whole of this afternoon, I called my brother. I'm like, I'm very excited about this conversation. Madame for be friend you may say, I'm very excited. Also now where me say I'm at Manningham. But I'm excited about this conversation.
I am excited about it as well. And I'm really glad to be here. For anybody listening, we don't take you for granted. So it will be useful. I can assure that.
Thank you very much for coming. Right, so just like I said in my, opening submission, in our part of the world, I think it's our religious background, and I say, a bit culture kakra bibia be because of that, we don't think about the risk. Sounds one near the call your business where even though you catch and say take risk, there is nothing that we will have to manage when it comes to our risk. Intinema yen consider no. Na yen consider no so no it ends up affecting us. Now let's talk about small businesses. Now as entrepreneurs, like I said, small businesses are always advised to take risk. But enemy bisa say at what point does risk become too risky and dangerous?
I really like your context. And in all conversations, social-cultural context sets the template. Into the evolution of my career as a risk practitioner started with actuarial science, masters in risk and finance, about 14 years in practice as a risk person now, and then law. If you look at the evolution of my practice, even in very high-end organizations, you understand that the understanding as recent as 2012, 2013, you were seen as an appendage of the law. Until you are there because the law requires that they should create a risk department.
A risk department.
Until they created the marshal hall. But the real merit of it, it's now dawning on us. And we're now waking up to the realities of it. So I think your context is absolutely critical. Even more so now, where it's the baby out of Vuga. I say the world has become highly volatile, extremely uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Into everybody on tomatoes cry na why you be on COVID? You couldn't have gone for your tomatoes from Wenchi.
No correct.
So the real question is, we've all experienced the realities of an uncertain world in a way that has brought risk management a little closer to us than we thought before.
No correct.
The real question is, when is risk too much? There's no simple answer to that, but the perspective I'll probably say is that if you don't understand what you're doing, then perhaps the risk is too much. Because se uye bibia na wontiasia dia uye na ehu chen obi a ebia onimzo or the ne sigem, but onim se eja nti ebia shoe na ehye no wa share shoe a it's fireproof.
Okay.
Inti one hwe na hu ni so nam jama beka se ozo ko fa jani mu bi. Ba wan tia se one hwe a onye no na ye twa akra one hwe e betwa on so na
I like that.
So basically I have come to understand that lack of understanding is perhaps the most important risk in all context. And because most of us are handed over knowledge without asking a lot as part of our social cultural context. Yes, sir. So we have inherited things that inherent in them are so much risk, but we haven't moved. Into a typical example, say, policies no saying that forgetting that the person who put the policy there was trying to solve a certain risk. It's moved on so many years. And so all purported to hold on to the policy has ended up becoming more greater risk because the law has moved on 5 years and you're holding on to some law 5 years ago.
Yes.
So I think that the inability to be dynamic and attuned to context without understanding is perhaps a lot of risk. And I think where I've said that we just jump into it and no answer because it's kaum. So we all jump at things and end up that doing things we don't really understand,
Okay.
or haven't sat back to really analyze what we're
Calculate
getting
the-
into.
the
So
cost.
if you're in anything you don't fully understand the value chain, fully understand exactly where the revenue models are, exactly what you're doing, then probably you've bitten a little more than you can chew.
Wow, fantastic. I think that this is quite, an interesting and elaborate, mekraman, because usually, like you said, in our part of the world, especially even now, maybe I may say, individual bondholders should, consider joining, taking the terms. Otherwise, then
What's the option?
yes. That make us say, "What be boy me? What be sia? What be chere me ni amenye? What be do for yes?"
So when they start here,
They say, "I say when they hear you, it's
Yes,
you're about to baby." And I make us say, half of the time, no, ye niyama yentiasie, and that is the truth. Because for near AC impona ma yemu bebre na ya sha see going to other businesses because yes, so we even don't know what is next because so many employers can put to me tiaka intina ya adrian say minko business but ene who tie ya the thing is that sadia will come no one tia say I say
you create more problems. You create more problems, not only for yourself but for your customers, you create problems.
Lots of problems, at least. And now let's come to the financial risk. I
Right.
want us to take it, one by one, so that you better see. Now, it has been advised that it is wrong to start a business with a loan. Is that a risk too dangerous to take? And are there other financial risks small business owners often take financially?
If you're answering that question theoretically, the theory says it's good to borrow because in borrowing, once you leverage a boa into book mude se bosia but sa book no names a Ghana at the time no base rate and a policy rate at 28 which is a basic lending in an economy. No names a lending to SMEs about 48 and I say 52. What it technically means is that no, if your margins are not more than a third of your capital, and that's why people advise against because of our context. Theoretically, borrowing has a lot of advantages, even for
Benefits.
tax purposes. So, lending and using people's money to run your business is actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is that in our context, if your margins are not sustainable enough, because I don't know any bank who will give you a loan now maybe less than 35. I don't know. And tell me one job you do where your margins are more than 50%. I don't know either. So if your margins are not up to 50%, it means that the minimum of 35% at your bank. So you end up working for somebody.
Wow.
So that's the dynamic with lending. And because of our context where the price of loan is a little too much, is a little more than the average business can sustain on their balance sheet or their expenditure. Okay, amount we pay in interest is a little too high for any business that is starting.
To thrive.
Into the banks themselves, if they are a little more prudent, because on himself. So usually the advice is being gather from people you know, friends, but recently what I have found to be more effective is because so we advise people but people have ideas, they don't have the money. What I tell people now is that if you understand exactly what you want to do,
it makes it easier.
Sometimes you can trade off certain things rather than money. So let me give a typical example.
My example.
You think that and recently commodities are bamano inti koto abro abeton. And pembe no the inti abro no or farmer no is onimo on Jundi. And I think I've said in many platforms there's a character crisis more in Ghana than anything.
True.
Untimi njini penny So the only reason why unya browning method is a
Yenjiuni.
But if you probably could get a person of repute, and I say if you've built character before starting the business in a way that your integrity could be vouched for. What you can trade is then not the money for the maize, but you could literally trade your integrity for the initial stock.
I guess a trust capital.
Exactly what it's called.
Okay.
And then I was having a conversation with a young lady who started a business and was saying that her initial stock or cover by oboka, but she literally had to start with some 10 people, no mustati susu. So 500, and then 5,000, they give it to one person.
Yeah.
And then, so it's called collective schemes.
Yeah.
It may sound very informal, but again, the problem is only nipa 10 koya. Oh yeah, sure said na So so it's more of a character problem, which makes fundraising difficult. Otherwise, fundraising shouldn't be that difficult because it's always a trade of value.
Yeah.
It is a minimum say me trade book we are. And typically before I did this book, the printer, I think the total cost, I didn't have more than 10%. But I went to the printer, had a conversation with and Mr. Reko, so Tia Nyaminshano. I spoke with Mr. Elderly man, respectable man. He looked at me. Before I went to him, somebody had said, and maybe I should, Uncle Ebo White, and greetings to him, had spoke of me to him.
Okay.
So I went to him. He said, young man, I've heard about you. I'll print the books for you. Give me what you have.
All right.
Let's agree on terms. And the book may not have done so well commercially, but my word was enough that I wasn't going to disgrace either Uncle Ebo or the elderly, respectable man who had trusted me to print my books because I didn't have the money. So what I'm saying is that you know, it's always a value chain. And we all know our parents used to take things on credit and things like that. In Tibia, credit in free bank, but if you're a person of integrity, you can get the credit from your suppliers. That's the same thing. Or you can get partners, a little more than just bankers. Again, this same lady I was talking about who said she started with 10 people, pooled their funds. She was like, she met somebody, she sells binders, and was like, the person was like, oh, I've seen the traction you're making. Can I invest in your business? This is somebody she knows and can vouch for her character. I'm sure that Cassandra, if you know somebody very well and you understand what they are doing and you can see through the business, it won't be as difficult as giving them some money, knowing that a business partnership and yes, you know. And I know so many people. We personally, there was a time back we put money in some small businesses. So they have a lot of people around, whether angels or venture capitals or people who have a lot of interest in growth funds, who will put money in things so far as they can trust the character and the business model.
Wow.
Into those are in terms of fundraising and financing. Those are things that those are perspectives I may have.
Fantastic. I mean, I think that I'm learning a lot, Nana, and I'm sure you're learning something. Listen, we are live on Facebook, Happy 98.9. Go there, share as many times as possible because I believe that we all need to understand this. Adia wukum no one tiasia, you know, ubekwa ko sika, ubekwa ko hard drink, udem grofo sika, you know, ubekwa ko hard drink, be brave. I think so. Ban alone. I mean, I even didn't consider this, you know, into detail to say rather than go that route, no, you could use your trust into one kasano. What kind of personality now we're building? Now, you know, Captain Kofi Amoabeng was at our summit. He said, you know, trust is one very, very important thing in partnership because because ye ni musa mudie mujisika munchia na ye ka loan asemi kra na ya yesu enti na say bank ya yesu ban obi wo ho kwakojiska na adwemu ni say mentua. Now let's go to you know, human
let me
Yes.
add some numbers, and I picked this book simply because of that.
Tell us a book the title you day. No, Oba no cranny book. My name say or your author.
But I did a study in 2014 of about corporate SMEs, like businesses, small medium enterprises. In 2014, from January to December, a month on month, we looked at 6,000 businesses in January, almost 7,000 businesses in February. Up to the minimum we looked at was 5,000 businesses, separate entities. Wow. Individuals, 14,000 in January, down to about 10,000 in December. So in all, we studied a total of almost 50,000 businesses in Ghana here, because we were fortunate to get a portfolio of Sambank to do the study.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that all these people, SMEs, about 5,000 of them and 10,000 individuals over the time had been giving money. In this Ghana, no more business, no.
50,000 people.
About 50,000.
About 50,000, okay.
The real question is asking me, said the probability, at the end of the study, the probability of people who had been able to pay back their money. When you look at the individuals, the probability on the individual level was almost 80% who had defaulted. Which is that almost 8 out of 2. 8 out of 2 of...
No, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. Of all the individuals, about 14 or 15,000 of them had defaulted in their payment in some form. In the businesses, almost 45%, which is almost 50%. So, from that day, we've always said, business.
Yes.
If you haven't looked at the numbers, it may be difficult to empirically assess. But I think that this suggested it could be one of two things. Either the process of that portfolio was so wrong that they were selecting the wrong people. And I said the people themselves do not get the outcomes they want even when they have the money. And I tend to think is the second one.
Yes.
So if even I guaranteed and gave you the money you want now for your business, almost
the
50,
probability
almost 50% chance you still fail.
You will still fail. Yeah, between you and I mean, we are Ghanaians. One say, I don't know. We are yet to go to the bottom of it, but I think, sir, because you love research and all that, perhaps you would help us. What is that mental way? Is it because Yamfa credit and share say? Because of course certain, jurisdictional credits na part of the CSA me credit worthiness me mpesi be blacklist me ni ade enti because eno hyase no no nso nyini ne eka ne ho se on pese ye bebla because enka ye hunti na obetumi ye na dwe eto de bia o scan the tube o si ontua.
You see, we started with social cultural context. Ye nyina ye nyini no me ye show so obiati be we o kafo didi. Everybody heard it.
No clear.
And you see, language is a way we codify our philosophy, our way of life. If the cultural context and template is, and I remember, I think there was an advert, Obekono or Abenkwine, Munambebre, Daineka, Stolontia, no Didi. I think that as much as I hesitate to say this, I think that we're tended towards the people that devalue integrity.
Matthias, yeah.
Inti ase yenfa yenshada mbuye honsa. And I hesitate to say this, but I think that
the facts are there.
Look at the banks that collapsed. Almost all of them have portfolios where loans were given to people.
Yes.
And it would amaze you if you see the portfolios of people we are shouting and saying the banks have collapsed,
yes.
It would amaze you to see the number of people, the caliber and the quality of people who are on the loan book and didn't pay their loans. Basically. So I think that there is a cultural template where people are a little less, regard integrity a little less.
Inti
so obu faso nebe ya obebu faso. So Odyssey nebe maybe it's also a function of the poverty. Comma de ache inti unya eduana don sami nyina. So maybe on a social cultural context, that's a part of it. Maybe the culture has primed us not to regard money and pain or staying to our words and things like that. But I think there's another part of it, which for me is more important, which is structure.
Structure.
In a cultural dynamic like ours, you cannot afford as anybody to do business with anybody on the basis of trust. I think that they say it's an old Russian proverb that says that trust but verify. You know, I think that yes, trust is absolutely important, but it's become, because of our social cultural context, whether primed by poverty or long lineage of disregard for our personal respect and integrity, it's become important that as a business person, you must absolutely build structure. You must decouple practices from personal sentiment, from liking, from everything, and build structure. And almost every business, if you fail on the structure, most likely your business will fail.
I like that. Safi Naudi with Fidia to Happy 98.9. This is the Money Hub with me, Cassandra. My guest and now He's an enterprise risk analyst, as well as a financial analyst, as well as a lawyer. Yeah, let's go to human resource risk. I heard you say something a little bit about it. Say, you know, you build a business, you build a structure. So they you know, and because the structures are not there. Say na into me, you know, you me see force say no, or you me papa bako into asema wuken. Nasio ijuma no want to me enye. Into just I know it will still go back to our culture and way, but how do we, because and what we're doing is trying to change the mindset a little. Yeah, cause say Obi what situation is trying to, you know, sieve and trying to see how to restructure. Obi now many businesses have interviewed, have expressed disappointment in partnerships, especially with spouse and you know, minya, my close friend. What kind of risk do we often fail to consider when it to take or take for granted when entering such partnerships? It is a minya, miyere, and how can we? What can we do to mitigate these risks? And non sukra kawana partnerships so and work.
Cassandra, I think that in every business, my humble view, the people are the most important assets, because even the structure will be built by the people, and the quality of any business is because of the quality of the people. So part of the reasons why SMEs are struggling, because the quality of the people are a little, in terms of understanding,
below.
And so when it comes to human capital, every organization say, oh, kitchen cry, you should absolutely prioritize people. There are three kinds of people I'm going to mention you should avoid at all costs. The very first one is an unproductive politician. That's how I term them. That's a person who comes to your job. He didn't come to meet productivity, but obebo nseko, ordinano be fast structure. He came to free ride. And he will free ride, or she will free ride to the extent that the structures allowed them to. Obeka obia huasem, obe yesa, obe butleke whoever, play the organizational politics to the max, and then would rise up without any valid record of productivity.
Okay.
So, and it's very common in a cultural context where we carry chiefs in palanquin. Sebi, yenina nipa, ebi awe a leader, but why must another person carry another person? That's a whole different conversation. But in a cultural template where people carry people, affirmations and wanting to be the boss and power distance, oga, ne, someone can cloud really what we want to achieve. And so the first people you must try as an SME is that don't hire somebody who is only there to give you funds or to give you yes.
I know they're towel.
Everybody must come because they have value.
They have value.
And as a matter of fact, as the owner of the business you must be the most incompetent person in the business. Anybody you bring on who does not understand or have more competence than you in terms of moving the business forward, you hire the wrong person. So it doesn't matter whether it's your mother, your father, your father's wife, your wife's girlfriend. I mean, it's completely irrelevant. The single most important question is, what is the value this person is bringing to the business? And be very clear. You see, when I say some of these things, people think that, we a book long. These are not us. You are importing cultures.
Book nane and no I young considering
Absolutely.
yes.
There are so many generations of businesses that has failed. And we ask ourselves, tell me one Ghanaian company that is global. Let's reduce it to Pan-African or sub-regional and has lasted for 100 years. And you probably you won't get one. The question is why? So we need to understand that the quality of the people matter. So the first one is the unproductive. The second one is the thief.
Thief needs to will be brave.
You know, one be ye juma or be si wechi ebe pay the ope. Right? And so we all, and particularly because of our integrity crisis, you must avoid thieves at all costs.
Time.
All costs, because obeba be many people have complained about a beer shop. Yeah. So when it comes to either the politicians or the thieves, avoid them. But the last person is a little more sublime. They may not be incompetent in terms of like the politician who is just, or they may not be persons of integrity, but they may just have the wrong attitude, right? If the person is malleable to change, which is basically service.
Yes.
Most of us in business think we're doing customers favor.
Aye.
Me na me de me sika bro.
Yes.
But also say wa ma obi beba. You know, so there's a service orientation that needs to change entirely in our business practice. Into all start here juma now for obi. Hunu ni say ye be som ya.
Yeah.
Sebi yenyeska by ye koto e de ensa asifom afaniamano. If you can't, I mean, forget about this. I will do all the dirty work, do all the legwork, be as hands-on as it gets. You know, so if you don't get people who are as practical and as with the right attitude to serve first, then you would have a problem. So these are the three people. Avoid by all means. If the person is malleable to change with a bad attitude and
with a bit of training can be,
if you can train them for service, maybe, but avoid a thief at all costs. The person who is there without value because they don't have competence or yes I know. Maninya no fie. Uko fia ome yes but the bird juma ma. Nyamisha.
Now let's go to the legislation part, and I think that part is we need to. It is one of the things that we overlook. Going to business, there are legislations that govern us, whether it's GRA, whether it's FDA. Nancy ana me tax near maybe na maybe sa. Mama say I didn't tax near my say you. I say me mpo amako me ba kampo na me my say 18 no say tax there is like that everywhere. Everyone is scared of the tax, but we don't know why. What are some of the legislations that we overlook? And like we started in the beginning, Amika said, what is too risky? That becomes too risky for us as I
think baseline, you have a business or enterprise because the law allows you to. And that's very profound if you think about it. Whether it's a registration of business or register a business into a sole proprietor and as a limited by guarantee or limited by shares, whatever the nature of the businesses. It is because the law allows it to be. And so the law is the very first thing that defines what you have. You register the business with the Office of the Registrar General. They give you that business name or a papers to show company by shares or whatever it is. That basically means that you had an interface with the law. And the law has requirements for all these products. So whether it's business registration, whether it's by company by shares, limited by guarantee, there are requirements that the law stipulates for these. Because they are products of the law allocates for them. Typically, baseline, I always tell people your annual returns with the registrar office,
Yeah.
your tax filings,
Aye.
baseline, but also your SNET for your employees. If you're into food or into some processing of form, then you're talking about either
OFDA.
your FDA or your standards authority, depending
Yeah,
on what you're
yeah.
working on. In all, the type of business, some businesses are a little more regulated than others.
Yeah.
So the nature of the law for some businesses are a little more structured. In TABI or regulator, if you're in banking,
Aye.
so those specific industries will also give you some added laws. But every business
Emra.
has an interface with the
Okay.
law.
Okay.
And what I would say is that pay time and pay attention to knowing what laws regulate the entity you call your business
Yeah.
and the nature of the business the law has allowed you to
I like
run.
that. I like that. It gives you a lot of peace of mind. When at first, na your dream is say, me a small business. But hey, as you go, it can come and it can come and ruin everything if you don't pay attention.
Very true.
The most important key word is to pay attention.
Very true.
Pay attention. Yeah, can ma wadwene emra.
Is it not interesting that it says pay? So you're paying something, but it's attention you're paying.
Yes,
and most of the time we want to pay with money, but in many things you pay with attention.
Pay with attention.
Yeah.
Pay with attention. Business awo yene mrabeng ene govern ho. How much do you know about business awo komuno? Sika awo kwakojina. How much do you know about it? Do you even know the interest rate? And I say yaka say oh no, koje loan. What the market no be say na dia koje loan. Na also sorry na koje loan. Listen to the experts. Make sure say all the time biano channel edda. Eba no kwada say ya. It has to be money hub so that you can grow. But yes, sorry, so no, yeah, the last one, which is reputational, risk, is sometimes or mostly, with business you name your womb. Into the kobane say BB happen to or brand. They say me BB happen to me brand now. How do we manage those kind of reputational risks?
The empire saying Ahunya, it's very true. All my two books has happened because somebody said something that somebody could vouch.
Yeah.
This conversation is happening because there is a repute of some form.
No crap.
We're all trading in repute. Inti yato 1 euro over the other because you say we Mercedes is Mercedes because there's a certain reputation that
no crap.
So reputation is actually all there is in all forms of business. And if you think about it very carefully, perhaps what Mercedes has done well is to sell us a repute that makes you feel you've arrived, right? And more for all of us, if there's anything, if you are a DJ, ask yourself, if they listed the top 5 DJs in Ghana, where am I? What does it take to be there and chase that reputation? If it's a lawyer, if it's a finance, if it's author, there is something about why people rise up, be interested in that reputation, because I don't think anybody rises by chance. And so that reputation is usually built over long years of consistency.
I like that.
They've been tried and tested so many times, and they keep growing. People can vouch for that character. I tell people, so Otto Nkatia Boga. Nkatia Boga also say Nkatia na samo. But Nkatia Boga is the description at the back.
Yeah.
The back just say what maybe oil 5 kilojoules. What and the consistency with which I could top pack na weigh maybe 5 grams with the same calibration in order to have that seal of FDA to say it's a way Nkatia Boga and what tells you that it actually comes to the repute. Into Bibiano to get the seal of approval. I will say Aswahe. In so way they are their bronzam, they saw but you must have been tried and tested because you started ya no be in the business, bro. But obi bejiwe the first.
Yes.
Answer no wakukacho obi. So meto wo honenya ebia no be ba mesha no kwana na makacha nze menko. You know, so reputation is at the center of all businesses.
Everything.
Build it deeper. Because at dia hunya ne beba.
I like that.
Inti yaka say yesin ahunya because at dia hunya ba. You know, and
dimpa yesin ahunya because edi ahunyaba.
And once we're ending, it's also important to I heard you shout, greet some very great people.
Yes, please,
I think
greet them.
It's important that
Greet
I
them.
greet my life and health provider, which
Okay.
is Metropolitan.
Okay. Hey, you remember Metropolitan will make
Fachem is important.
No, go ahead.
It's important that I
Yes.
agree them because
Don't worry, me mouth chance, no.
Medase.
Yo.
Inti, just to greet them for the great work.
And
they are
Yao
doing.
has a book. It's the what?
Yes. So
the
the
fate of.
first book was called Fate of System
Okay.
Thinking. The second one is called Be the Difference.
Go and
But as
get
I
these
always
books.
say, we have a web page. It's a social enterprise called Africa Learn.
Okay.
Africa Learn is africalearn.org. We have a lot of articles. If you read one article
Africa Learn.
every day, it'll
It'll
probably
help
take you
you.
about 3 months, 4 months to finish reading. We have over 100 articles, free resources. We have recordings of other seminars we've done at other places.
Lovely.
Free content. Just make sure you learn something.
Lovely.
And
Lovely.
let's
Africa
build
Learn.
Africa together.
Awesome. My guest today, very interesting. I told you, now you know why Anna Meniaje Yao Sompa is my guest. And then he's an author, he's an enterprise risk analyst or your financial analyst. He's a lawyer as well. And I'm sure if you're looking for him, you can DM me so that I can have that right to him.
Like and subscribe and click on the notification. Happy FM, Nimdie, Happy FM, and Nijenkwa.